So what we're looking at, let's start this bit from here. This is, if you guys don't know, this is Sam Morgan, AOS List Labs. AOS List Labs, go and like and subscribe on his channel. We're going to just be, we're not going to watch the whole video because that's unfair. Be 69, 70 likes. I love that. So go and check this out. So this is over on there, and it only posted it yesterday, a couple of days ago. So he's talking about Nuzlocke. Specifically, let's talk about the premise here.
I'm Sam Morgan, and
This is the intro. Great game, shit meta, the Warhammer Nuzlocke. Sam then goes on in quite a nice way to talk about what he thinks and how he thinks the meta is. Right, it's problematic for a variety of reasons, in his opinion. The core engine is, in my opinion, quite good. Like the core game and auxiliary material is poor. Talking about the battle tomes, I think, is what he's talking about. It's a great channel, and I always love listening to Smorgan talk, so you should go and check him out. It's really, really good. Now, I don't necessarily agree with all of this information in some ways, but I do see what he's saying. He's talking about like salamander spam, feels like spam dragon spam, which is coming up, is going to be a thing. He feels like there should be like a variety of different units in the game, which is kind of like his problem. And he thinks that the way it is at the minute is quite poor. Here he talks about Darren, so Darren Watson from the show, breaking down these different lists, and like he's renamed them all spam deficient war scroll, spam deficient war scroll, spam deficient war scroll, which is kind of one of the things I talked about on the Honest Wargamer Monday show when we're reviewing the first battle tomes, the AOS one, the Stormcast one, and the Uruk Warclans one. I said because they've stripped back lots of the core mechanics from battle tomes, so like allegiance abilities aren't as strong, sub-faction abilities aren't as strong, spell laws aren't as good, command abilities have been taken off war scrolls. Because of all of that has happened. You need the war scrolls to do more work, and therefore it's all about what is the most effective war scroll, or most importantly, what's the most efficient war scroll. So I do agree with that. I think that point is really, really true. And I think that there are some good war scrolls which have like a variety of utility to them, but unfortunately they kind of get like superseded by those hyper efficient salamander style war scrolls, maybe even sharks as an example. We talked about how useful the Hurricanum is. It's a wizard, it's a +1 to hit aura, it's a +1 to cast aura, it's a shooting attack. Like the Hurricanum's just fantastically effective and efficient, or something like the Frostheart Phoenix, which is a -1 to wound bubble, which is huge, but also it has a 4-up ward. Like very, very effective, very efficient. Yeah, so I can completely see what he's saying here. And it's because he doesn't want this to happen. He wants creative, like exciting metas, and he wants to play. He doesn't want to go to a tournament and see the same 4-5 lists all the time. And I vibe on that. Like I can completely be a part of that conversation. Then he talks about comp. So comp, just for everyone at home who might be new and doesn't know what it means, comp is where you break down like the game as is, and then you think, right, there are some problems, like Foxes, for instance. So we saw Facehammer recently, which is an event that happens in Manchester in England. Facehammer did some soft comp. So they made it so that some armies got more points. So instead of playing 2,000 points, they got to play at 2,100 or 2,150. They made it so that some core mechanics changed. So Gotrek wasn't able to heal. They made it so Foxes weren't able to retreat. So this is the Wind Spirits for Lumineth Realm Lords weren't able to retreat in their phase, basically. Yeah. Hey Warhammer Rob. So this is kind of like where they were. This is what he's talking about. He doesn't think. Well, he was saying, like, should we comp or should we not comp? And he was saying that he thinks the goalpost moved too fast. There's a bunch of reasons. You should go and listen to Sam's reasons on it. I've also talked about comp in the past and what I think about it. I think ultimately the game should just be played as is, because then Games Workshop, if there are problems, Games Workshop can just deal with them. The problem is that doesn't really help someone if there's a really dominant army build. For instance, when we saw Slaanesh dominating at 70%. It's one of the things that came up really quickly. One of the YouTube comments recently, shout out to you, from Patrick Camosa. I hope this is Stabgrot I'm not sure. I like what Vince said on Warhammer Weekly. Game is such a bad state. A player can win with a worse army. Okay, he didn't actually say it this way, but something similar. I like current AOS. Perhaps I shouldn't because I lost every game so far, but I like it anyway. Right, okay, so the game is in a bad state. This is really important. As someone who's done the stats for Age of Sigmar for 4 years, 4.5 years, maybe 5, for about 4 years, right? The game has been in a very bad state. Let me tell you, yeah? Let me tell you, the game has been in a much worse place. I would actually argue, yeah, and having done the stats for 4 years, and also, like, anecdotally, the game is in the best place it's ever been. There are definitely some dominant units and builds, but it is not a one-shot play, which is what we've had in the past. Vanguard Wing, Slaanesh, Flesh Eater Courts and Skaven were a duality, which basically wrecked the game. Daughters of Cain, can we not forget the 75% win rate Daughters of Cain army? The only reason it wasn't like everywhere is because people didn't all have it. So the game was much worse. This is, in my opinion, the best the game has been competitively, but it is very predictable. We know what the archetypes are, yeah? And we know those archetypes probably aren't going to change very much, specifically because the reason the archetypes are strong is things like save stacking. So Archaon is very strong because of his War Scroll anyway, but also because of save stacking and what you're able to add to Archaon, which is why you see him in a bunch of different lists. Lumineth are Lumineth are a kind of a different conversation. They're just strong because of their book, I'm going to say, long story short. So that's a different thing. But Nagash strong because of save stacking. Morathi and the Bow Stakes, not really. That's to do with its War Scroll. But effectively, the books are fairly polarized. The books are themselves are self-explanatory. And at a competitive level, I know what it's going to be, right? Like when we do the Stat Center on the Monday, which we do, you can go back and watch all the videos. You go and see, like you can just read me the list. Like you just say, Robert's Daughters of Cain. I'm like, cool. Is it Hagnar or is it Keltnar? Which one of those two? Right? Those are the kind of 2 points. Anyway, so I don't think game's in a bad place, but it definitely could be in a more dynamic an interesting place from a list building perspective, which I think Sam is a big list builder. Like, definitely I could vibe with. Hey, Kelbar. Hey, chat. Hey, Rob. I had an idea for a Teams format. Tell me what you think. Hey, Darker Design. We'll come back to that in a bit, right? Can we do this after? Just hold on to it, and then we'll come back to it. Is that cool with you? A big thumb. Anyway. To comp or not to comp is the question. Then Sam explains the different comp systems that have happened before. He talks about his feelings on comp, all of which are worth listening to. Yeah, so please do go watch this whole video. I'll include it in the show notes below for you guys to listen. So then we start hearing about Nuzher, and I'm just going to let Sam tell you about it.
Pokemon, and Pokemon is, yeah.
So let's all have a listen.
In order for them to, balance the system. So it got me thinking about my favorite game, Pokemon. And Pokemon is a super simple game. Anyone that was like an 8-year-old with Pokemon Blue or Red will have leveled their Charizard up to level 100 and just walk through the Elite Four, which is the final.
I never completed Pokemon Blue or Red. Pretty heartbroken about that, if I'm 100% honest. I really want to get the new ones, but am I allowed to as an adult male? Question. I'd like to. 5
bosses of the game, and Pokemon games are amazing because to an extent they're open world, and because you can go around and catch and trade and battle your friends and all these things. The world building is brilliant, and the competitive scene is amazing. There are millions of permutations. I play VGC, and on any given night, I might play for hours against builds that I've never played before, because there quite literally is the unlimited permutations for what you can do in terms of your team construction, and then your items, and then your EVs, and then your IVs. So the Nuzlocke Challenge is a set of rules intended to create a higher level of difficulty for the actual game itself. So what that means is that many challengers feel that the rules also serve a purpose in encouraging the use of Pokemon the player would not normally choose, and promoting closer bonds. It's a separate thing. It's really relevant for our purposes. No one's ever...
Hey, Sam goes, listen, I'm with Sam I'm all about developing bonds with my minis, right? Let's start talking to them. Let's name them. So who suggested? Someone suggested recently, I think it was Colonel Cabbage, who runs the London Open. He suggested 5 tournament points or even 10 tournament points, which is equal to a win or a draw. Just for naming your list. Like, just for saying, hey, like, your list is X or whatever it's going to be. Like, just naming your list. Personally, I'm in. 10 points for naming your list, in my opinion. And I could definitely see for naming your units as well. It's a story-based game. Like, we're telling stories. Like, can we not, like, we talk about this all the time, but, like, I reckon we could do that. Like, I would like to see that. I'd like to see the units get named. It just makes it weird and wacky. We're weird and wacky dudes. We play with little mini fellas, like, and ladies, and we're weird and wacky ladies. You know what I mean? Like, we're a weird community. Let's get weirder, is what I'm saying. Yeah?
Ever formed a bond with their Kairos, or maybe Bud, but no one aside from Bud has formed a bond with their Kairos. The rules are not in-game functions, but are self-imposed on the part of the player, and
This is really interesting. Super interesting. So it's self-imposed. Self-imposed. Not tournament-imposed, not worldwide imposed, self-imposed.
That's super important and a subject to variation. So this is coming from our good friends at Bulbapedia. If you want to read more about the Nuzlocke challenge, if you jump onto Bulbapedia, it's like a Wikipedia for Pokemon. And super simple, right? Super simple. So fainted Pokemon are considered dead. You don't get to revive them. They're out of the game. You can only catch the first Pokemon you encounter in each area. And
imagine a game where you can only take your alive models from game 1 into game 2. Imagine that game. Imagine that game. It's just game 5 with 1 Gatebreaker Mega Gargant with 3 wounds left versus 1 Cathalar in a Shrine Luminor. Like, uh-oh. Like, that's all you've got left.
There's no voluntary reset. You can't be having a bad game and then reset. That's the whole challenge, right? So it's really interesting. Nuzlocks have the most views of any Pokemon content, give or take, on YouTube, because people are fascinated by the handicaps that are put in place.
So this is such a good point, and again, it really cuts to it really points a finger at Sam's genius, to a degree. And that's not me blowing smoke up his arse. I just love the guy. I think the guy's smart, funny, articulate. I've had nothing but positive interactions with him, and I think he's wise. So I'm a big Sam stan. I'm just going to point that out. The point here that he's saying is that the format makes it more interesting, and I got to agree. It's why I made the Super Series, right? I made it so that it's in a different format. You start having conversations at a really healthy level when you start imposing restrictions, because you ask why are they in place. Well, some people ask why they're in place. Some people are like, yes sir, sign me the fuck up, right? Watch out for those people. That's all I'm gonna say. Watch out for those people. But the people who question why is this in place, what's going on, it's good, because then you can kind of say, okay, there's something really interesting going on here. An example would be when we do the Super Series and we do the ban face. If you guys don't know, first time you've watched my content, go and check out the T Sports Network. But most importantly, it's an esports style format for playing Warhammer that allows 2 teams that play each other to ban stuff. Twitch chat know this already. Twitch chat, they know. They've got their finger emotes. They've got everything. They know. But the point is I think it's more engaging. It's more engaging. I was actually speaking to the guys over in Canada recently. They've got a singles event, they've got a team event, and they're like, the team event is more engaging. Singles event just isn't particularly engaging. And I agree. I don't think it's as engaging as team events. And then I think team events are more interesting when you start to imply stuff. However, if you did, when we get onto it in a minute, and I think Sam's point is right, if I knew that there was a field of 100 players, I'm going to be at a 100-player event this weekend doing live coverage of the event. If I knew 50 of the players were Nuzlocking themselves, I'd be so interested in how they're doing. I mean, I'm always interested when we go to a tournament if there's a Sylvaneth player, if there's because they're not doing very well at the minute. Khorne's a good example. They're doing terribly at the minute. Beast of Chaos or Gloomspite Gitz, if either of those 2 armies were there, if they end of Saturday ended up on 3-0s, if there were 2 Beast of Chaos players on 3-0s or 2 Gitz players on 3-0s, those would be points of conversation. I would expect Daughters of Khaine. I would expect Tzeentch. I would expect Gargants. I would expect Lumineth all to be hitting those 3-0 brackets at the end of day one. I wouldn't expect those others. So it's more intrigue, right? Okay, that means we'll be taking no bottles into a second game. MJ Baker says. Oh, MJ. Love you so much, bud.
And there are professional Nuzlockers that earn a lot of money just playing variations of these rules. So they might have, for instance, a month or a season where it's like the Nuzlocke challenge this month is you can only use ghost Pokemon, or the Nuzlocke challenge this month is that you have to swap who your first Pokemon is every battle. Like there's a whole heap of things. There's unlimited things you could explore in this space, but the important point is it's voluntary, it's self-imposed, and that
guarantee there's someone in the YouTube comments who does not fucking listen to this. It's voluntary. Self-imposed. Voluntary. Hey, Circon, wouldn't it be cool to bring back the fantasy meme to limit units to 0, 2, 0, 1 within the armies? Hey, Circon, that's the point, right? Like, whatever, like, let's say this kicks off. What the Nuzlocke challenge is, I suppose you haven't watched the rest of the video. Let's watch.
It incentivizes diversity, which is, I think, really good. And for these particular games, because they are so easy, like I just played Pokemon Shield when it came out.
Someone in the comments just heard incentivize diversity and got triggered as shit.
Went through the whole game and both the DLCs and never once was defeated. And that's not because I'm brilliant, it's because it's easy. So yeah, I really loved the idea of a Nuzlocke, and it got me thinking about a Warhammer Nuzlocke. So some
fucking so excited when I saw this. It's great.
Caveats here. This isn't a balance patch. This isn't supposed to fix the game. Is the model exploitable? Like, absolutely it's exploitable. And if your objective is to break it, you're probably not the target demographic for this. If everyone used this, then new builds would prevail. And basically you'd be presented with new design challenges. That's the cycle. So if every single person played this way, we would still have builds rise to ascendancy, be so problematic that they're not fun, and then we'd need to look at other things to address. So it would be constant, right? I'm certainly not proposing that everyone pick this up. The intent is to mitigate, and the magnitude.
See, that's the magnanimous of it. You kind of have to watch yourself when you do anything in the Warhammer space, because like, there's so many contrary people like, no, I'm not going to do it. Like, oh, you can't force me. Like when we did the Super Series stuff, people were like, I don't like the idea of. I'm like, I'm not coming to your house and breaking your toys. You don't have to. Everyone is doing it voluntarily. Like, it's volunteers, right? Hey, Harry, thanks for subscribing.
Of which, builds affect both casual players, but also people that want to be competitive without the tedium of running the same net list as the other 8 players in the top 10. One of the design principles is to mitigate some of the common, obvious, and problematic builds and to increase variety. So one of the rules that I've proposed here is an example of adverse consequences. So the rule is intended to enhance the ecosystem, but the adverse consequence, and it's around Mega Gargants, is that Nighthaunt and Gloomspite, who I think are legitimately lifted like multiple tiers in competitiveness when they've got a Mega Gargant, that those armies, Nighthaunt and Gloomspite, would be impacted because they would lose the opportunity to run the Mega. So that obviously is a problem that I'm aware of, but I don't care about. I hate Megas. I
love that brutal honesty. It's like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. Like, I hate them. And I'm like, yeah, I think I hate them too. Like, I think I hate them too. Like, I like one Gargant. There should never have been a whole book. You can have one in your army. You can have some man crushers, little ones, fine. But not a whole army of them. Like, I just don't care. Like, restriction produces fun. One is cool. Oh, look, it's the one Mega Gargant. Like Circon saying in the chat, rare choices. I don't think I hate that idea either. Like, stuff's elite and rare. Like, I think I kind of like the idea that you can build an army like all Dracos, like we saw Ben do at the weekend at the Warhammer World event. I don't hate that idea. But, like, it does mean it's only certain armies that are able to be... I don't know. Especially if they're too spammable, it becomes too bad.
The other thing is that the Mega is a driving force, right, behind the arms race. If your list passes the Gargant DPS, the damage per second, if your list is like my list pictured here, where I've been running 11 Salamanders, it's likely it's capable of tabling many reasonable builds within 2.5 turns. So by removing the Gargants entirely, right, you disincentivize the ultra high damage builds, because often the ultra high damage builds are predicated on range damage, and range damage obviously is then susceptible to alphas. So you have this sort of cycle thing going on, right? And I think that you have fewer full range damage armies in a meta that doesn't have 140 wounds of big dumb babies.
The thing is like it's just hypothesis, right? Like, Sam's a smart gamer, right? And he's just working it out. But the important point is it will create diversity, yeah? Like, I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I think probably I agree. But what he's doing is he's saying, look, if we shake it up, you get like you're going to get different flavors. Like, this is good. And I think I'm super on board with that.
So let's have a look. What have I come up with here? So no battle regiments. Battle regiments are so boring and so tedious. And Darren's thread on Twitter is really interesting because a number of players of varying skill degrees came in on their high horse and said, "Oh, well, the battle regiment's not a problem. I don't even use it."
Twitch chat. Let's go. Let's go find that thread. Yeah, there's no way we're leaving that. Yeah, hanging. Let's go and find that thread. Yeah, let's not fuck about. Let's go look through this thread and see if we can find some spice melange. In an objective-based game, are Gargants such an issue, Crispy? Yes. Based on numbers, they're the most successful. No, they're the second most successful army in Age of Sigmar at the minute, to answer that question. Here's a handy AOC list building guide. Main elements are: don't use your faction command trait if possible. Your faction artifacts universal ones are likely better. Be a one drop, spam efficiency. So this is what Sam's talking about basically here. Lex, yes, Lex, love Lex. Hello, Lex, if you're watching this back. My list fit this template, and I don't like how right you are. And look at this, Darren's such a love. Be kind to yourself. It's the path that's been laid out for you. He's just so nice, right? Is Battle Regiment an issue? I would certainly change the game if you couldn't one drop. Spamming efficient units come with a high drop price. Okay, that's from Kieran. One drop and design turn order needs to go. I don't agree with this at all, Jay. Like, one drop and design turn order needs to go. No, one drop can go, but deciding turn order does not need to go. If you literally go back and watch the video we talked, like the video, if you watch it back on YouTube or if you watch it back on Twitch or whatever, or you're listening to the podcast, go back and listen to the episode where we talked about the meta watch. The fact that in 40k, you just roll a dice and someone wins. Terrible for a game. Deciding turn order is fantastic because it goes back to list writing. Don't agree with that at all. But the one drop can fuck off, like, happily. Okay, so let's actually look at the stats and talk about Battle Regiment, right? Soulblight Gravelords, 73% of the battalion usage is Battle Regiment. Let's talk about these, baby. Let's talk about OCRs. Battle Regiment, only 42% of the time. Yeah, Hunters of the Heartlands is the main one for OCRs, but they're in like the 50%, 48% win rate up there. Let's talk, so Lumineth Realm Lords. Let's talk about Lumineth. 60% win rate. 88% of their lists have a battle regiment in. 88%. Why? They want to go first. They want to shoot you off the board. Yeah? If you take away their ability to decide that they've got a one drop, then it doesn't matter who gets the choice to go first. You're still going to try and build low, but their army will be less efficient. Elka Reb, thanks for resubscribing. Daughters of Cain. Bum, bum, bum. 58% win rate, 81% of the lists are Battle Regiment. 81%, right? I love that we can just do this. Fucking, the stats team are the best. They're just so good. Piece of Chaos, 29% win rate, 56% is Battle Regiment. It's all chaff, baby. It's all chaff. None of it's good. It's all rubbish. Oh my god, I love this game so much. Anyway, so something to just talk about there. Let's get back to Sam's list. Sorry, let's get back to Sam's video. Not that. This is the one. Let's go.
As if like what an individual person uses is in some way reflective of the broader meta, or whether something's problematic. So it's great that people can build durable lists with 6, 7 or 8 drops and use their superior generalship to then counter deploy and play for first or second and all of those things. But the problem is the battle regiment makes it easy for anyone to build an incredibly strong list that has control before the game's even started. And for instance, this list I've got pictured on the screen, I've got 2 battle regiments, right? One of the battle regiments is a group of salamanders that deploy off board.
Just for everyone at home, who might be new, I've been really interested up until this point, but I don't know what the hell he's talking about. In Age of Sigmar, the fantasy-based game, a battle regiment means that you can drop all of your army in one go. So if I have all of my army inside of a battalion called a battle regiment, yeah. So there are different core battalions. If I have them all inside there, I can drop it all. It means I deploy. Drop means deploy. Sorry, I can deploy the whole army in one go. Bum, 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 bum. That means I've done a 1 drop. If my opponent is a 10 drop, I outdrop them, mean I get to choose who goes first and second that battle round. Now, because the priority roll is in Age of Sigmar, where you roll in between battle rounds, once both players have a go, you do a dice roll to see who gets to go, who gets to choose who goes first in the next battle round. The choice to go first in battle rounds is an integral part of the game. It's hard baked into how the game plays. It's fantastic. It's fantastic, it's fantastic, it's fantastic. Battle regiments, 1-drops that smash, have always been a problem. They used to be called 1-drop battalions in Age of Sigmar 2 and 1, and generally they ended up getting nerfed as much as possible, but they were still a problem. It's not the ability to decide who goes first that's super strong, although it is. It's which armies you can... Because some armies can build battle regiments, and going first does nothing. Having a battle regiment and being able to go first, having a 1-drop being able to go first, doesn't do anything for their win rate. Otherwise, they would all have battle regiments and they would all have really high win rates. Not to be this guy. Let's do it again and just look at the stats for a second. If we look at Gargants, so who are the other very successful army at the minute. In fact, actually, let's look at Gargants. So Sons of Behemoth, 60% win rate. Yeah, Bosses of the Stomp, 47%, right? Yeah, so no battle regiment, or some battle regiments, 18% of the time, but not as much. But they've got one of the best win rates in the game. It's got nothing to do with actually going first. It's got everything to do with being able to design an army and knowing you're going first. If there was no battle regiments, i.e. no choices to drop first, you'd be in a really solid place. And
then I'm able to protect by using the Realm Shaper engine. I'm able to protect the rest of my army. So I'm a 2-drop, but I can almost always give away first and with no consequence. And that's problematic. If I was a 10-drop, I'd on occasion be given first, and then have to think about, am I going to drop my salamanders with the risk of them being doubled back? It just changes the game dynamic quite a lot, and that's at 2-drop. 1-drop is even worse. The next one is the one-off. You can have one of the universal artifacts or command traits. This Master of Magic, coupled with the reroll casts on a combat monster, is awful. And I think limiting that means that everyone's still got access to the 5-up ward if they need it, or the Arcane Tome if they need it, or reroll chance if they need it. You still get access to it, right? But you don't get your cake and eat it too. You're not getting everything. The next one's the rule of 3. So no battle line unit can be taken more than 3 times. This is to address the spam, and obviously a build like my Nighthaunt build, not my Nighthaunt, my Skaven build, for instance, I think maybe has 11 units of Night Runners and 4.
So the one-off universal artifacts command traits, just bin them off. Just bin them off. If you want diversity, I get it. You want a ward save to go on X or whatever, or an Arcane Tome to go on this unit because it changes how the army works. And the Arcane Tome is the one that probably produces more list diversity than you'll see from... and because the Arcane Tome is an artifact you can take on one of your characters and make them a wizard. It's great. It means characters that weren't previously wizards can become wizards. That's even better because you put you make a Maw-Crusher a wizard, and now he can have the magic traits, so command traits, which previously they weren't able to take. So they weren't necessarily written together. So you could do some really fun and janky stuff. However, the Arcane Tome, I'd be more likely to keep. I would get rid of the Ethereal Amulet. I'd probably get rid of all of the core ones in a Nuzlocke. For me, is what I would do. I would get rid of all of them because I think that makes it more interesting. I just love this. Like, the more I think about this, so I watched this last night as I was going to sleep, right? Hey, Clint Licker, love you. Long time, love you back. Encore GM, thanks very much for resubscribing. But yeah, like, I'd rather an Amulet of Destiny be replaced by something that makes the character a priest. That's a great suggestion, Real Polygeek. Like, 11 out of 10 suggestion. So yeah, like, I would, because what you're looking, I love this. I went to bed sleep at, like, last night watching it, dreaming of it, thinking about it, and I know Sam's just like looking at something from another game system, but that's what's really cool. What we're looking to do is make the most fun games possible, and Sam's seen something in another game that makes stuff fun, and he's like, let's go.
Or units of Gutter Runner, so that obviously would fail this test, and I'd have to think about some other way of running Skaven. The reason I've capped battle line at 3 is some armies are limited to just the single battle line option, so we don't want them to be invalidated entirely. And then when we move on to other.
So then look at this. Rule of 3. No battle line unit can be taken more than 3 times. So this is stopping spam. This is his idea to stop spam. Although actually, when you think about it, you don't tend to have like loads of X, like Morathi and the Bow Snakes. Like if we talk about problem builds at the top of the meta at the minute, Morathi and the Bow Snakes doing really, really well. But there's normally only 15 Bow Snakes plus Morathi, and then a variety of other pieces. It's actually a pretty dynamic army. It's not spam that's particularly causing any issues. Seraphon list with Salamanders 100%, and maybe that's some of Sam's like lived experiences coming through. Some of the other stuff that we see, Lumineth Realm Lords tends to be 30 Sentinels, 2 lots of Wardens, and then some Foxes. You can limit the number of Foxes that you've got, but like, it's not really, like, again, I wouldn't argue that there's much spam involved in that. The Dracoth list that we saw from the weekend was different units. So we saw 4, I think it was Tempesters. We saw 2 Desolators. So that it was spam, but it was different units. All did the same thing. So actually, I do wonder which of the top-end lists that would actually affect. But I guess what it means is you can't create any of those spam lists if you were trying to do that, which I think is what Sam's really trying to talk about here, which I think is cool. Like, big fan of it.
Other units, it's a rule of 2. No other unit can be taken more than twice. So Salamanders, you can take 2 units of 2. You can have 4 Salamanders. Over the course of the game, you could summon another 3. I mean, you can still get up to 7 Salamanders. But it stops things like the old Eel build, which I know has been pointed out, or the new Shark build, or a number of other problematic builds. Even just spamming of characters. There are some armies that maybe want to take 3 or 4.
That said, though, I've got no problem with 6 Wergog Prophets. That's a list that should be allowed to just escape.
Of the same character, and this looks to address that. And the rule of...
I love this bit. Rule of Big Dumb Babies, no Mega Gargants. Just like, 'cause I don't like them. I love that.
Big Dumb Babies, no Mega Gargants. I think that they are a failure from the designer's perspective. They need to have a serious think about how they might work in the future. They're certainly strong. They're probably the strongest, or one of the strongest armies. Certainly if there was some sort of matrix strength of army versus difficulty to play, it'd be super low on the difficulty to play axis and super high on the strength of army axis. So I think by removing them, you actually remove a heap of associated issues, both in terms of the mercenaries and also the army itself. All right, so
Okay, so then Sam goes on to talk about some lists here. And again, I want to let you guys just jump through and watch the rest of that video, because all of it's worthwhile. Like, absolutely all of it's worthwhile. And I hope, I'm going to make sure Sam is okay with me reviewing it like this. This has been my process of reviewing it, and because hopefully it gets more eyes on the video. That's kind of what I'm looking towards. It's an interesting discussion. Twitch chat, your time to talk to me about what you think about the Nuzlocke system. Again, it's a completely voluntary system, so that's Sam's Warhammer Nuzlocke, and I don't think I'm against it. I think the rule of, just to be clear on what it is again, I don't think the rule of 3 or the rule of 2 necessarily even really affect. No other unit can be taken more than 2 times. Does affect some sort of thing, some sort of builds, but not loads of different builds. I'm trying to think of what it would affect, because I do like it when you have a bunch of different diversity, but I just don't think I agree that it's the Age of Spam. I think that what it is, it's the age of hyper efficiency versus like inefficiency. Like some stuff is just way better than some other stuff, and so you see that more and more. And because you see that more and more, also the conversation. I hope, like doing the Honest Wargamer show, doing the stat show, putting the list on the honestwargamer.com. You guys could go check that out at any point. It's all free to go and check out. Those are like tournament winning lists and lists that are doing well. People are really seeing what is good, and so they're making better purchasing choices. They're not just buying X because I like it. They're buying X because it's good, taking it to an event, and then doing well with it or trying to do well with it. I think those are really positive things, because you don't want to waste your money on something that isn't going to work very well inside of a game. For me personally, that's me. If you're buying it just because you want to paint it, then why the fuck do you give a fuck about what tournament results are? Like, it doesn't matter. Like you're not part of the conversation. Like, but if you're going to tournaments or even planning on going to tournaments, even if you never actually go, but you're planning to, you want to make good purchasing choices, right? It's interesting. Anything that adds more variety is good to me, says Darker Design. I think that's super fair. It would nerf Boomthirster lists, says Coloru. It would nerf Boomthirster this. So you could have 3, maybe 2 Boomthirsters. Maybe. That's a good point, Coloru. But if Boomthirsters were actually good, would you want to see multiple Boomthirsters? Like, do you want to see triple Star Drake? Do you want to see triple Maw-Crusher? Do you want to... I guess it's all about personal choice, right? Like, again, Nuzlocke is again, a self-policing system. I've always maintained, or I always like the idea that maybe it's because I started a Warhammer Fantasy Battle. So to me, it's always just that's quite high-pitched. I don't like how high-pitched my voice was then. But to me, oh dear, some fragile masculinity showing up right there. I want like some dudes. I want some infantry. Like, I don't want it to be all elites punching each other, because then they become the standard. You end up just going bigger and bigger. I want like some line infantry. I want some little dudes trying their hardest in a world, like, because it gives good context. I don't want Gargants to be everywhere. I want Gargants to be rare. I want 30 or 20 dudes around their base, like little human kind of like size guys or dwarfs battling it out, because that gives me a great visual image on the tabletop. 2 Gargants punching each other kind of looks a bit ridiculous, I think, and I can kind of see. Same like Archeon. I don't really vibe on the big Archeon model. Like, it's too much, especially for how prevalent it is, especially for how much you see it on the tabletop. You see it all the time, and I kind of like it. It makes the little fellas feel more redundant, and they are to a huge degree. Like, they are. Whereas I quite like the idea of, like, your cavalry mounted lord. Like, I kind of want Chaos Lord on Karkadrak to be like the big danger. I don't really stand the god models, if I'm honest, and I'd like to not see them in the game as much. It would be really fun to be at list building phase, and then you play lots of people who don't give a fuck about Nuzlocke, says Rob Kelly. Maybe, but like, that's the point, right? You get to have the Nuzlocke League. You get to have like a stats show about Nuzlocks. You get to you kind of get to like track players around the world who using the Nuzlocke system. I like it. Hey, first time chatter, girly man. What about making people play CP to bring Gargants, like super heavies and 40k? So we don't quite build lists the same way in Age of Sigmar, so it doesn't quite work the same because you don't end up having CP, and Gargants overly don't use a lot of CP anyway. I guess what you're talking about is affecting the list building at that point. I think what Sam's main point is he wants the actual game to have more diversity in the units. Ultimately, that's on Games Workshop to make different war scrolls that are more diverse and more effective against each other. They have like better unit roles. Like you don't want just like infantry unit A, infantry unit B, infantry unit C. You want them all to have different roles. This one runs and charges. This one can retreat and charge. This one can get a pre-game move. Like, simple things that you could add to each war scroll that gives variety for what those war scrolls do. Yeah, one of them is going to have a better save, or one of them is going to have better movement, or it's going to have better attack profile. So you're going to end up choosing those because for the points, the utility of what the ability does isn't going to be as useful as how many attacks they do, let's say. But you can design better war scrolls. That's one of the things that they're majorly not doing at the minute, is they're not making war scrolls diverse enough and having enough utility. obviously ignoring Lumineth. They went mental with Lumineth. Mercenaries Gargants cost a CP, don't they? They do, Nemesis Zandrak. Make Megas unique. I think that's a good point. You could still have 3 Megas in the list then. I would take Battle Line off them as well and make them have to take Man Crushers. But this isn't meant to be a conversation about just Megas. It's meant to be a conversation about the whole game. And I think Sam's put forward a really good conversation. You guys should go check him out.